come to us, chat, we'll give you clarification. And if it doesn't fit you, then yeah, that's absolutely fine. You have clarity. But if it does, then you have somebody to help you along the way.
What comes up for you when you think about that, looking at that, the future generations and what millennials are experiencing as their parents and grandparents are experiencing different life events at this stage of the game?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I was thinking about something with your other question that you had asked, but to talk about this one, it kind of ties in with what I wanted to say. Our generation is every generation has very different things happening, right? But our generation is when the internet, YouTube, and all that stuff just blew up like crazy. And that's given us so much more leverage than the generation prior. Because when you think about all the stuff that we've learned, Richard, I'm sure you're an electrician, but I'm sure you've done plumbing, you've done everything yourself because of YouTube and learning all these different skills that our fathers and our parents had to go to the library, flip through a book, and try to figure it out themselves. So our generation is very different because we have a different set of tools to be able to use and pivot and move forward. And that's also ingrained different skills for us. It's like if somebody else can do it, I could figure that stuff out, right? And that's kind of the difference with our generation. We're very resourceful to be able to accomplish things. And when you're talking about like kind of the difference, learning about the next generation, learning about probate and all that stuff. Before, people would just talk to friends and try to learn it. But now we have this trove of resources. Let's learn about probate. What's the difference in probate between each province? We have access to all that stuff. So it gives us a lot more knowledge and gives us a lot more, ammunition to talk to an expert and to learn how to do things properly. So yeah, that's kind of the difference that I see with our generation versus the older generation moving on and things like that. And now, just having kids, we want to be able to pass this on to, because our millennial generation at the cusp, we're in our 40s, pushing that down to the next generation. We don't want them to be useless. They need to be able to learn these other skills that we have so that they can grow up and do the same thing and be better than us. Because now their generation is going to have AI, which has been incredible, pushing forward everything else so it's going to amplify whatever that we've been able to accomplish.
Yeah, I love that. The different set of tools, that makes so much sense. Great point, Quan. Now, Paul, we talking about a little bit about, doing plumbing work or doing some of the different construction elements. That's something that I certainly have had my fair share at, and I know you have as well. Quan, I think, knowing that you're Colby as a reasonably high implementer, you need to get some of that physical element in. In fact, I'm pretty sure you're recording this in an office that you built yourself, which is great. But if we think about the changes of those tools, the internet specifically, the access to information, YouTube as an example, access to information. There's so much information created, uploaded, available to us on a daily basis. There's a lot of huge advantage that comes with that. But there can be some disadvantage as well. So in relation to thinking about your financials, learning about different concepts and strategies, there's a ton of elements there that can be hugely advantageous to learn and go really deep and granular into a subject. If it's Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, dividend stock portfolios, you can really zone in on a specific sector. But are people doing that? And what is some of the risks of having all that information? So Paul, I'm kind of curious from your standpoint, just because we have it all and it could be a huge advantage, there also could be some disadvantages. What are the disadvantages you see for people leveraging that and maybe not doing it to their maximum advantage? Is it the questions that they're asking? Is it the caliber of how they're inquiring for what they're looking at? What do you think is some of the challenges there?
Yeah, and that's a great point, and it kind of just got me thinking too. Like, we've been talking about like the different generations, right? And so I think back. So my parents were older when I was born. So my dad was actually alive during World War II. He was pretty young in World War II. So he was a lot older when I was born. So I actually grew up with that experience of that, that we got to conserve, we got to preserve, we use everything we can. We don't buy anything extra. And so then when my generation came along, those millennials, it was like Quan, we had different tools, right? Like Quan's talking about. And I remember when my parents or that generation had to go do something, they had to go talk to somebody, right? And sit down, go to the library, whatever it might be. Our generation got to just go on the internet, right? Rich, you talked about learning those skills. The first house I ever renovated, if I didn't know how to do something, I went to YouTube, learned how to do it in 20 minutes, went and tested it. If I sucked at it, I called my buddy to come fix it, right? If it was good enough, it was done, right? So that's how I got through those things. And I kind of think I have a 12-year-old daughter and a 2.5-year-old daughter now. And so I'm looking at those tools that she's using, right? The Chat GPT, and there's so much benefit to it, but I think it's almost reverted where, and maybe this falls in line with your question, Rich, but it just kind of was what I was thinking as you're sharing there. It's reverted back to almost like the tools my dad had, where now my job as a parent, my job with my daughter is not to teach her everything, but to guide her and to point her in the right direction of the things she's learning, right? Because she doesn't need to ask me any questions. She just goes Chat GPT, here's the answer. But, whether it's on the internet or Chat GPT, it's probably not always the right answer, right? And so it's been cool seeing them transition of those different tools, but also like you're talking about, there are some downsides to what are happening. And so, if my daughter goes on, she doesn't have social media, but one day she will. And when she's listening to TikToks of financial advice, that's not always going to be the best advice, right? And so I think that's a huge thing, I think, for us passing on those tools and those skills to the next generation. It's not the amount of information, it's the right information amidst all of the noise, right?
We have a ton more amazing conversations and great clips just like this if you go right here. Or if you want to watch the rest of this conversation, the full episode, click right here.